NHS England. We're meeting this morning in public in Leeds, and on behalf of the board I'd like very much to welcome those of you who have joined us in the meeting room this morning. It's a meeting in public rather than a public meeting. In other words, we're this morning transacting quite a volume of business, as you'll see from our agenda, and we will be, I think, spending quite an amount of time on some really important issues. At the end of the meeting, we will go into private session, but I would just like to say again informally that members of the board are very happy to talk to individuals in between the two meetings. The private meeting will be this afternoon addressing a number of issues which are commercial in confidence and which we are not able to take in the public meeting. I should say the reason for doing this stuff in public is that we on NHS England get it, that we have an extraordinarily serious and honourable responsibility, which is to ensure that decisions that are taken about the care that's provided by the NHS and commissioned through the funds which reside with us are taken in public, openly and transparently. I am therefore insisting on every occasion that business is brought to the private meeting that there is good, substantial reason for it being taken privately. We also meet as a board, by the way, informally from time to time around what we call strategy or development sessions. So some of the early work of business that comes formally to the board is undertaken in a combination of executive members, non-executive members around the table in development sessions. So, for example, yesterday we spent the morning thinking about the future potential impact of technologies in the provision of healthcare within England, and not only looking at IT and data, but other technologies which may come onto the market. In the afternoon, we looked at genetics and genomics to try to understand how that played in not only to the changes that we might expect within healthcare globally, but also against the 5-year forward view that we published recently and which we'll return to this morning. So in that context, the items that we'll be attending to this morning are items of business that we believe absolutely do need to be taken and considered in public. A note on the agenda: you'll see that at the end of the agenda, under item 12, there are several items of board committee feedback that are starred, the purpose of which is to invite any member of the board, if they wish to unstar, and to invite discussion on those items. Otherwise, we will take them as reports to the board that are read. I have a notice so far of a request to unstar the item relating to quality and clinical risks. So Cyril Chandler will be joining us at the table later this morning when he arrives, and I know he's very keen to speak to his paper. So I've opened the board meeting formally. I'd like to invite members of the board to declare any interests in any of the business under consideration, if they have any. I have no declarations, thank you. I have apologies from Lord Adebowale, but he has written to me and I have circulated his note relating to items on the agenda to all members of the board, and I've invited those who will be presenting on those items to reflect on Victor's comments in their presentations. One final bit of business is to say there's no fire alarm scheduled, no fire alarm test scheduled for the course of the meeting, and if the alarms do sound, our team will escort you to a safe place. Well, thank you very much then. May I move into the business of the meeting? We have the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any issues on the minutes? No, there are not. I don't have notice of any matters arising. Therefore, we'll take the minutes and pass on. We have now the Chief Executive's report, and I'll invite Simon Stevens to introduce it.
Thank you, Malcolm. I'm going to be quite brief because most of the items that I reference are covered at greater length elsewhere on the agenda, but I just want to pick out 3 sets of things. Firstly, to note the publication of the NHS 5-year forward view on the 23rd of October, which, as the board will remember following our conversation at the last meeting, was a joint production from the 6 national leadership bodies in the National Health Service: Monitor, TDA, the Care Quality Commission, Health Education England, Public Health England and NHS England. So this was all 6 of us setting out a shared point of view and a set of actions that we commit to take in order to help work with local partners and broader stakeholders on 3 big questions. Why does healthcare in this country need to change? What will it look like when we've done so? And how are we going to get there? I think we were all gratified by the support and the reception that the 5-year forward view received, which in part was precisely because it does represent a very significant latent consensus on a number of these big ticket questions, which is sometimes concealed either by the immediate issues in front of us or by some other debates that sometimes obscure the fact that people do understand why, although the health service has done very well over the last 15 years, the last 5 years, doing more of the same is unlikely to be sustainable over the next 5. And so we're going to have to make some big changes on prevention and demand, some big changes on how care is organised, and some big changes on how we drive efficiency and investment in the system. So it provides a good route map for a lot of work which is now required, both to continue the joint national working that exemplified this effort, but also to ensure that we have a proper national-local dialogue and that we continue to properly engage with broader patients groups, citizens groups, local government, all of the partners who helped shape this in the first place. So I think so far so good. David Bennett, David Flory and I have conducted now 4 regional meetings around the country within the last 10 days or so for the chief executives of provider organisations, CCGs, local authorities, to begin that dialogue about how to now advance the priorities set out in the forward view, and we will obviously be doing further work between us and coming back to this board on what that will look like. We want to make some pretty substantial progress on some of this by spring. Elements of it will be embedded in the shared planning guidance that we will be issuing for 15-16. So there are a set of immediate things we want to get on with, as well as some longer-term choices and positioning that is now required. So that's the forward view. The here and now, as you know and can see and we'll discuss in the NHS performance report, huge mobilisation of effort across the National Health Service to ensure that we get waiting times back on track. Hospitals in particular are engaged in a major effort to treat long waiters by the end of November, give themselves headroom for the winter period. And as Barbara will describe, significant work right across the country on managing A&E pressures, ambulance pressures, particularly in combination with TDA and Monitor, and ensuring that the health service is pulling out all the stops to try and be sure that our patients get the care that they're entitled to over this winter period. You would also have seen that we published for the first time mental health access standards, which will begin to take effect from next year, which we think are very important both at the severe and enduring mental health end of the spectrum, also for anxiety and depression services. And that's just the first step in a longer journey that we want to take. Also recognising that we're going to need to continue to see much more progress on child and adolescent mental health services, as recently underlined by an important report by the Health Select Committee earlier this week. And then the third and final set of things I would just draw your attention to would be some of the contingency planning which is going on in respect of both the industrial relations dispute that is going on across the health service, and in particular planning and preparedness for Ebola. And I might, Malcolm, just ask Barbara to briefly update the board, particularly on the Ebola preparedness, where, again, huge cross-sectoral action recognising that the Department of Health and Public Health England have leadership responsibilities here alongside us.
Barbara.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Yes, the board will be aware of NHS England's specific role in contingency and planning for unusual episodes, for emergencies. Industrial action is one, and there's already there was a lot of activity to ensure we were prepared for the first round of industrial action, and a lot of continuing activity to make sure that particularly our ambulance services are supported to be ready if there's future industrial action. Some is planned for later on this month. But there's a specific focus at the moment on Ebola, and because this is deemed as preparedness for an emergency, then NHS England's role changes, and we are responsible for ensuring that the NHS is completely prepared for all aspects of dealing with this serious illness. As part of that, we take a different role under normal circumstances. When we're dealing with routine care for patients, we commission the care, we describe the services, and we're responsible for ensuring that they're high quality services, but we don't have a direct command and control relationship with the provider organisations who are overseen by Monitor and the NHS TDA. That changes when we have emergency planning, and in terms of Ebola, NHS England are in a position, should it be necessary, and of course the trusts and the provider organisations always comply and are very keen to support us on this, but we do have the ability to direct and therefore communicate directly with them, and over the last period I've been communicating directly with trust chief executives about this issue, which I wouldn't normally do on others. So the overarching responsibility under the direction of COBRA is managed by the Department of Health, but you can see that we've got a very significant role working very closely with Public Health England and other partners. There's a great deal of activity, but there are 6 things particularly that the programme plan we've put together that what the NHS needs to do in terms of supporting. First of all, there is some support in West Africa. So a lot of our staff are going out to West Africa to support there, and clinical advice and anything else we need to do to help the control of the disease there. The second, and we've already had one incident, is repatriation. So should somebody need to be brought back from elsewhere, and I think we had an excellent result. The Royal Free is where we have the 2 very specialist beds at the moment, and it was a great relief when the individual was returned, looked after in one of those beds, and is now well again. Screening at entry ports, whilst Public Health England Department of Health are overseeing the actual screening, of course, should screening result in an individual who is suspected of having Ebola, then it is entirely to the NHS. It's the response the NHS makes in ensuring that that patient is properly dealt with until we determine whether or not they do have Ebola. Another big part of the work is the awareness and preparedness of the staff. And I think this is the one where we're putting in the most effort, and there is still more work to do. We need to ensure that all first point of contact health staff understand what questions they should be asking if there might be a suspicion that an individual could have Ebola. And particularly, we need to be sure that they're aware what precautions they need to take if the suspicion turns into a significant assumption that the patient might be affected. So we've got a major communications exercise with GP practices and every provider organisation to do that. We then move on to the 5th, which is the handling of a suspected case. So what we do with individuals when we think it's really likely that they have Ebola, how we do the full treatment rather than just that initial contact. And then finally, the dealing with patients who are diagnosed as having Ebola. And a major part of the work for us is the resilience of the system if the numbers increase. At the moment, we've had no cases diagnosed in this country. We hope that continues, but clearly the NHS has to be in a position to deal with however many patients we need to, and the plans to open extra beds both at the Royal Free and across other parts of the NHS in England to treat patients who have Ebola is a critical part of the work stream. So just to really, I feel the board, given this, it needs to just need assurance of everything we're doing on this. We're doing a lot of awareness training, and we're also assuring ourselves that those 6 parcels of work are being put into place. So we've written to all the provider organisations to ask that they assure us that their staff are fully briefed and have the right equipment and would know how to use that equipment. And we are doing some spot checks to make sure that in A&E departments and in GP surgeries, the right information is available to staff.
Well, thank you, Simon. I know that the board would wish me to express our thanks and congratulations to all of those who were involved in the preparation of the forward view. We're going to come back to it this morning, but at this stage of the meeting, we recognise that this has been an extraordinary collective effort. It's involved not only a large number of people within NHS England, but of course in our partner NHS organisations, and to have produced a report of such clarity with such a convergence of opinion, and to have found such support amongst patients' organisations and think tanks and other groups who can share with us the strength of view as to how the NHS needs to transform over the next 5 years, I think has been a very, very significant achievement. As we come back to it later this morning, you will hear from the board, I think, various commitments to how we now drive you and the executive team very hard for delivery. But I would like formally to put on record our thanks to you and to the team, and to you particularly for your leadership. Moira.
Echo that, Malcolm, but just wanted, I think, to suggest that the board puts on record our appreciation to all of those staff involved in preparation for Ebola. I mean, it's on top of very demanding jobs anyway, and it's incredibly important for the country. But we should express our sincere thanks, I think.
Thank you, Moira. Absolutely. Right. Thank you very much, Simon. Let's move on then.